Today's world hangs in the balance. As superpowers posture. Tonight, defending Australia. The major holes in our country's security revealed.
I mean, this is it. It's the only thing between me and almost $8 billion worth of weapon.
What Liam Bartlett discovers...
They want to know why you're filming.
...just shouldn't happen.
Let's see if the Royal Australian Navy has any counter-drone technology. So much for security.
In a world where political tensions are rising, is our country prepared?
But you don't want to be known as Minister for Showbags.
So we better be ready for war.
There we are there. Got him.
And I don't think we're ready.
Hello, I'm Michael Usher and welcome to Spotlight. We're constantly told we live in dangerous times, yet most of us are too busy to think about Australia's defence, or we assume we'll be bailed out by allies. But peace does have a price, and one way of avoiding conflict is to be well prepared. But right now, we aren't, as Liam found out.
You can't get any more Australian than this. The red centre of the continent. The very heart of our sunburnt country. And yet behind me is a patch of Aussie dirt as American as apple pie, and it's been that way for nearly 60 years. It's known as the Pine Gap Joint Surveillance and Communication Facility, and it's said to be the most important US intelligence asset outside their own country. Until lately, it's been out of sight, out of mind, and most importantly, out of range of any potential enemy. But not anymore.
So it's fair to say that bases like Pine Gap on Australian soil would already be on the Chinese radar, so to speak.
Absolutely, they would be. And you know, what's different between now and 10 years ago is that China has the capacity to hit those bases. They've got the intercontinental ballistic weapons. They have them now.
Regardless of whether Australia ever commits to any conflict, the importance of US bases here means we're already signed up. On a map of our joint facilities, Pine Gap is the bullseye in a target called Australia.
Tom, let's just talk about US assets on Australian soil. Does Pine Gap mean that Australia is a military target?
I think Australia's political alignment, Australia's commitment to the Australia-US alliance, to the rule-based international order, that means that Australia is a target.
As was on show at this week's immense military display in Beijing, where Xi Jinping was joined by his dictator fan club, China vastly outguns Australia on every front. Its navy alone dwarfs ours. By some estimates, nearly 400 ships against 10 operational vessels on a good day in Australia. Its army is 35 times bigger, and so it goes. With that overwhelming disparity, you'd think we'd be protecting our military assets and bases with everything we've got. Well, brace yourself for a nasty shock. Spotlight did the rounds of some of Australia's more important defence facilities. At Williamtown in New South Wales, the RAAF shares a runway with commercial flights.
The access to this is pretty extraordinary, I've got to say. We can just walk through here unchallenged. And as you can see, I'm only metres away from the runway. It's got a fence between me and it. And here comes another one. This is the home to the RAAF's best weapon. There's about 50 of those, 5th generation F-35 stealth fighters. And about 800 metres up there is where they're all housed under what can really only be described as shade cloth. The other incredible thing is look at this security. I mean, this is it. It's the only thing between me and almost $8 billion worth of weapon. Cyclone fence, I've got to say, I've seen fences just like this on pretty average building sites.
What does that say?
Well, that says someone down the end here with some sort of simple surface-to-air missile can interdict the base. It means a whole range of things like that.
Peter Lay should know. He was Chief of the Australian Army for 6 years. Now Director of the National Security Institute at the University of Canberra.
Australia's approach has been, well, we're okay, we're a long way. Technology has defeated geography. The war can come to us very soon, and we need to be able to respond.
The further north you travel, the more serious the problem becomes. Nowhere is it more obvious than RAF Base Amberley here, about an hour's drive from Brisbane. I mean, strategically, geographically, this is crucial for Australia's defence and our ability to strike back. But you can see through that fence some of our most powerful and potent combat assets just literally standing out in the open. Refuelers, transport planes, fighter jets.
Fly a couple of jets over, precision munitions, and you're going to put a hole in each of the runway cross sections, and the base is out of action.
We weren't stopped or challenged at either of these critical military bases. Our presence, it seems, went undetected. But it was a very different story when we paid a visit to the Chinese consulate in suburban Sydney.
I want to try to compare the levels of security here and see how other countries protect their assets on Australian soil, particularly China. So let's see how long it takes for us to be noticed here. This place has got more razor wire and cameras than all the Australian military bases that we've seen.
Hello, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Thanks.
How are you going? That's 5.5 minutes.
I
Yeah.
just received a phone call. They're asking if you're after anything.
If I'm...
They want to know why you're filming. They prefer like not to be filmed, you know, like.
They prefer not to be filmed.
Yeah, like. If
But
it's-
this is a public roadway.
No.
Yeah.
If it's just a little bit, like they don't mind, you know, like.
Okay. Well, that's nice of them.
But not.
Yeah, this is Australia.
Yeah, I know.
But we can stay out here, I presume, for as long as we like.
But they prefer like if you go on the other side.
On the other side. Incredible. All right.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
I'm George.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that.
Full marks to the Chinese consulate for employing friendly George. But the scant minutes it took for him to be sent out speak to a new world order, where everything from a Sydney footpath to a tiny reef in the Philippines is China's way or the highway. And the military build-up is frightening, echoing a terror we thought was in the past.
We're hearing almost every strategic commentator, including government, including those people who've been writing these reviews and the plans, that we're living in the most dire, consequential strategic times since the 1930s.
What would you say to critics who would say, well, yeah, hang on a minute, you're a military man. You're scaremongering by saying that conflict may be on our doorstep at any stage?
I'd say that's my job. We need to make sure that people are aware of what the risks are. I spent most of my career in an army at peace, so I would rather we were at peace. But my professional training and almost every other, I think, competent strategic commentator is saying this peace is fast coming to a close, so we better be ready for war, and I don't think we're ready.
It's quite depressing hearing you say that.
I think it's the facts.
Do you think there's a real chance of conflict in our region in the short term?
Unfortunately, I do. Now, I don't think that conflict is inevitable. I don't think that there is a clear time frame.
Jennifer Parker spent 20 years in the Royal Australian Navy and was second in command of HMAS Darwin and a principal warfare officer. She's also a lawyer and lectures in naval studies at the University of New South Wales.
But I do think that conflict is increasingly likely for three key reasons. One, there is a trend across the world where states are resorting to military power to solve their problems. Two, the multilateral system has fundamentally broken down. The UN Security Council has fundamentally broken down. It doesn't function anymore. The third trend, on top of those two, is China's aggression in this region. There are Chinese ships and aircraft putting our ADF women and men at risk in international airspace and international waters in the South China Sea and Northeast Asia.
So less than 10 years ago, China stole 80% of the South China Sea.
Peter Jennings was Deputy Secretary for Strategy with the Defence Department. Through the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, he's also a respected voice in the debate over our national security.
China is not about trying to cooperate with Australia as an equal. It's telling us it wants to be the boss. And unless we want to accept that subordinate status, we're going to have to significantly gear up our own defence capabilities.
If an increasing risk of conflict isn't alarming enough, Australia's declining ability to defend itself is what keeps the experts up at night.
Realistically, are we in a position to be able to defend our country if a conflict happened tomorrow?
I think it would be really difficult. We could put in a first effort, but there wouldn't be much depth to it. Look at the size of the Defence Force. It's not a lot of people, and you can't send them all forward at once.
You're not confident?
No, I'm not confident at all.
What about the people who say, look, don't worry about it anyway. It's okay what the state of our army is.
You just can't deny these.
We've got America.
No, you just can't deny these things. And yes, we need the United States of America, and that's one of the risks at the moment. Without the US, there's not much we can do.
Wonderful to be here, Mr. President.
I mean, could we protect ourselves against ballistic missiles hitting Darwin? Yeah, for about 12 hours.
12 hours? That's just... That's ridiculous.
As I said, 12 hours is to give you a scale of the indication, but would we be able to protect ourselves against ballistic missiles hitting key infrastructure for 12 days right now? No. Not for years, not for months, not for days. If a conflict broke out right now, we would be begging the US to help us.
Begging.
Begging.
Up next, testing our defences.
Let's see if the Royal Australian Navy has any counter-drone technology working here.
And the Aussie drone killer we could have in our arsenal.
There we are there. Got him.
Under the heaviest bombardment of the New Guinea War, American and Australian troops land south of Salamoa.
The deep alliance formed through 2 world wars meant that where America went, Australia was often by its side.
Until at last, Australian and Americans looked down on the isthmus of Salamoa itself. The end of the long road is in sight.
But the Vietnam War was a turning point. Australian servicemen fought and died in a lost American cause. And the Australian public was divided.
In the period after we came back from Vietnam, there's this rejection. We don't do that sort of stuff. We're not going to do forward defence. We'll have the defence of Australia. It's a series of white papers that said, we will defend the nation, we won't go forward. Well, what happened? Rwanda, Cambodia, Somalia, and then Timor. And I remember very well Timor. We were lucky to get away with that. We hired a couple of ferries out of Tasmania to get us there. We didn't have the intelligence or the communications, and that was a big wake-up. But then we fell into Afghanistan and Iraq, and they were big wake-ups as well.
Australian deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan were limited and in line with American objectives. Now, 80 years on from World War II, the threat has come back to our shores, according to Tom Mankin, head of the US Centre for Strategic Budget Analysis in Washington.
You say we can no longer ignore the possibility of being attacked. Why are you so sure about that?
You know, that assessment is based on the capabilities that China is deploying. And those strike capabilities stretch all the way to Australia. It's not being melodramatic, it's stating facts. And I think we would be negligent if we ignored that changing reality.
And he says Australia is not pulling its weight.
I think that there's a belief that Australia can do more. I think there's also a belief that Australian political leaders have made pledges that heretofore have not fully come to pass. More needs to be done, and urgently.
We have a very small defence force that was designed for different purposes, designed for a different age, when we weren't dealing with an aggressive superpower like China is, that wants to dominate our region.
You're making it sound like a basket case.
It is a basket case, and frankly, I think it is an appalling situation. The senior leadership of the Defence Organisation has allowed this to happen.
In 2021, Aukus was announced.
This is an historic partnership. This is a forever partnership.
It stands for Australia, the United Kingdom and the US, and promises Australia the purchase of 3 nuclear-powered submarines in the early 2030s. The price is around $330 billion.
But we are spending billions of dollars over the next 10 years or so to get these advanced, sophisticated weapons in nuclear submarines. But are we doing that at the expense of the here and now?
Yes, absolutely we are. So we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. We're trying to have nuclear submarines, probably the most expensive military capability that you could build and operate. And we're trying to do that by cannibalising the existing defence force. It's a disaster. It's neither one thing nor the other.
In the US, the Aukus deal is already under review. So far, we've spent $800 million on the subs.
You're discussing Aukus with the Prime Minister, sir.
What does that mean?
Aukus, the Australia-US Defence Alliance.
But the people selling them aren't paying us much attention. Despite Defence Minister Richard Marles's recent trip to Washington, our Prime Minister is yet to meet the Commander-in-Chief.
Your president has met with dozens of world leaders in recent months. Do you think it matters that our Prime Minister still hasn't had a meeting with him?
Well, look, I think that this president, past presidents, put a lot of weight on personal relationships.
And clearly at the moment we haven't got one.
I think it would be desirable to build one.
Meanwhile, Xi Jinping is cementing dangerous relationships with dictators who fully support his plans for military expansion.
When the world talks about China extending its reach, the main flashpoint is here in the Philippines. Mainly in waters the Chinese like to call the South China Sea, but the locals insist it's the West Philippine Sea. And Chinese warships there push confrontation to the brink, trying to occupy areas that simply under international law just aren't theirs. Back in the old days, it used to be called the domino effect, but thankfully, the Philippines refuses to fall over.
China turned effectively shoals into islands, put weapon systems, radars, airstrips, based warships there in the South China Sea from about 2014 to 2016.
In March, 3 of those Chinese warships kept going, all the way to Australia and all the way around it.
When the Chinese sent those ships and they had the live firing exercises in the Tasman Sea and then they circumnavigated the country, you think that was a clear message?
It was a clear message. It was a message that they understand our vulnerability as the maritime domain, they understand our capability gaps, and they have told us before that when we interfere with things they don't like, then they will punish us. And that is the exact example of economic coercion. So yes, they're sending us a message, and we need to respond to that.
If announcements could be weaponised, we'd be in good shape. Australia has been promised one of Japan's new Mogami frigates by 2029, and 2 more 5 years later. Future acquisitions to protect a population that lives in the present.
I mean, what do we got? How many ships? What do we have in the Navy?
So from a naval perspective, and I think the Navy is probably one of the examples where we're hurting the most, we have 10 surface combatants. That is soon to be 9, so one of them is meant to decommission next year.
Hang on, when you say surface combatants, what do you mean by that?
So I mean frigates and destroyers. These are the offensive and defensive ships. These are the ships that carry missiles, torpedoes. These are your fighting ships.
With firepower.
With firepower.
When China sent those 3 ships, the number may have been a coincidence or even a joke. Perhaps they know exactly what we have and how many we can put to sea at any given time.
Well, when you think about ships, you kind of have a rule of 3. For every 3 ships you have, you can expect to have 1 operational, 1 in training, and 1 in maintenance. Now that's if you have reasonably new ships. Ours are incredibly old. So you've probably got 3 that may be operational.
But even if ships are operational, it doesn't matter if they can't be supplied.
So what else have we got?
We have 2 supply ships. You need replenishment ships. You need to be able to give the ships fuel, food and ammunition at sea. We only have 2 of those. Now, both of those seem to have defects. Certainly the last Senate estimates I saw, they were not functional. That's a problem.
And the list goes on. Delayed decisions and budget cuts that affect our naval capability and reduce maintenance. It leaves ships like this one stuck in port. To any enemy, a sitting duck.
I've got a very clear line of sight here to part of the Garden Island Naval Base, smack bang in the heart of Australia's biggest city, here in Sydney. This is the HMAS Adelaide, one of only 2 amphibious assault ships the Navy owns. Now, it begs the question, how important a target is this to any of our potential enemies? And perhaps more importantly, how protected is it? Now, given militaries around the world are all talking about these drones, let's see if the Royal Australian Navy has any counter-drone technology working here. How close is it? That's incredible. So that's a clear view of the entire deck. clear view of the entire ship and the surrounds. I mean, that drone is very close to the ship, very close, as you can see from those pictures. So much for security.
In a world where drones are now a primary weapon of war, that we could fly ours with such impunity almost beggars belief.
We flew a drone over the top of that ship. Now, it's only one drone, but as we've seen in Ukraine, you only need one.
Yes, it shouldn't have happened. That should not have happened because there is the technology that should exist on the ship to basically cut the electronic guidance on the drone, and it would have fallen
at the very least.
At the very least, it would have fallen out of the sky.
It would appear that we don't have a single piece of defensive sky-facing technology in place to protect our own assets here in Australia. Do you find that incredible?
It is incredible, and even more incredible is that in 2024 our government took decisions to cancel a whole lot of those air defence programs, which was part of the refocusing defence on 2040 rather than the now.
So someone did think they were a good idea, but they've been cancelled.
They have been cancelled. And yet the truth is, for the first time really since the Second World War, our bases are now vulnerable to attack.
Next, homegrown weapons of war. Made in Australia, ignored at our peril.
I'm terrified. It's the truth of it.
Seriously?
I'm terrified.
Barrage of Russian drones.
The most powerful drones that we have seen.
Regions have been targeted in drone attacks.
Become increasingly prevalent. More deadly warfare has been a game changer.
In June this year, a few $100,000 worth of Ukrainian drones destroyed around $10 billion of Russian warplanes on the ground. Once the cheering around the world died down, the questions began.
What does this all mean? Do we need to rethink the vulnerability of military hardware?
Yes, that is a big issue. A drone that costs a few $1,000s can do millions and millions of dollars worth of damage.
Clive Cuthell is Chief Operating Officer of Electro-Optic Systems, an Australian defence manufacturing company based in Canberra that makes drone-killing weapons. One is called the Slinger, and it can be mounted on just about any vehicle.
You can imagine when you're trying to shoot down these drones, it's fast, it's quick, it has to be. Now, this is a demonstration model, but it is the actual kit that EOS sell to all its military customers. And on the back here is the Slinger, and that is the real deal. Let's show you how this works. We have a drone above us right now. It's an incredibly simplistic system, being able to just track this across the sky, put these crosshairs on the top of the drone, and then there you go, the optical tracking system will lock in and allow me to shoot it out of the sky. There we are there, got him.
Could you defend Australia's airfields and naval bases from drone attack?
Yes, our company has products that are capable of defending air bases and other high-value assets like naval bases from drone attack.
But they haven't put anything in place yet, obviously.
They have only started to put some initial programs in place, and they have not yet made a big buying decision.
But time is running out, is it not, Clive?
Time is short, and this is an important issue that needs addressed.
This homegrown company has another game-changing weapon in its arsenal, a powerful anti-drone laser.
The advantage of laser technology is that they can have longer range and they can shoot down drones more quickly than traditional methods. When you use a laser, you do not run out of ammunition to shoot down the drone.
EOS just announced a $125 million international order for its laser drone killer. But at this stage, Australia is not buying.
It proves we've got the brains, we have the smarts, we're making the stuff, but we're not using it locally in our Defence Force.
I don't want to say there's a preference against Australian equipment, but sometimes you just get a sense they don't want to deal with us.
Explain to me what I'm looking at.
So, Liam, what you're looking at is an Australian-made solid rocket motor.
Vu Tran is part of Black Sky Industries, which makes solid fuel rockets in Australia.
Okay, so you could put this, whatever this is, in a rocket or a missile.
100%. And you don't have that, you don't have a rocket or a missile. This is a car without an engine. I think it's important to understand that a rocket's job is really simple. I've got to get somewhere really, really fast.
So it is rocket science?
It is, but not brain surgery.
Vu leads a curious double life.
Minnie? Hey, Minnie, come on through.
Vu is a GP one day of the week and tech billionaire from his previous career.
You know, I've spent a lot of time in tech. I spent a lot of time building a business with my best mates from high school.
That business is the Go One training platform, founded in a Brisbane garage 11 years ago, and now worth more than $3 billion.
And then as soon as I had a child, I thought to myself, well, what sort of world is she going to grow up in? And one of the biggest challenges for me is I'm the child of Vietnamese refugees. It's the story of the night my parents fled Vietnam on Dad's fishing boat. And I think about those sorts of stories, and I think about what it was like to be able to have things taken away from you and to be able to lose that opportunity to raise a family and to grow in a democracy. I'm constantly reminded that I'm only one generation away from war. My question is, in what direction?
Vu's family always had small businesses where he worked. Smart enough to go into medicine, he teamed up with his uni mates to found his wildly successful tech company. Now he's thrown his money and time into defence.
I'm in defence not because I want to, but I feel like I have to. If I could, I'd be spending all my time on health tech.
Is that because you think the situation is so dire?
I'm terrified. Because can you imagine a defence force in the world that doesn't have the pointiest thing in their arsenal, which are weapons, which are bombs, bullets and missiles?
And Australia's interest is what Vu says he's working for, to help correct a potentially deadly deficit in our defences.
The fact is, at the moment, Australia, for its defence, has tiny, almost non-existent capability in rockets and missiles.
I would say to you that we have no capability, not even tiny,
Zero.
when it comes to making it here.
Well,
there's a big difference, right? So I'm agreeing with you, right?
I'm
I'm saying we have a minuscule arsenal, and the government's trying to rectify that through purchasing more, but we're on a waiting list, right? There's a bit of demand at the moment, I don't know if you've seen. The flip side of it, though, in terms of our capability and our ability to build right here, today in this country, I'd argue is non-existent.
Do you think our government supports local defence manufacturers properly?
No, they don't. The government does not support local defence manufacturers. They want to have comfortable relationships with a very small number of so-called prime companies, which are the major defence companies. There's a large number of Australian small and medium-sized enterprises producing very capable military technology, which they can sell to Ukraine, but they can't sell to the Australian Defence Force.
Up next, The Defence Minister, who's as hard to pin down as Australia's defence policy.
You don't want to be known as Minister for Showbags. There's got to be substance to it. If there's a country showing the rest of the world how to stand up to China, it has to be the Philippines. We've come here with the Australian Defence Force to see how we can work together more effectively. We've also asked the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, several times over the last couple of months for an interview. It's been refused. However, the Minister, by coincidence, has turned up here to soak up the glory and held a press conference for local media.
So we took the opportunity to ask the questions we, and many military experts, want the answers to.
Now call on Liam Bartlett of Channel 7 News Australia.
Gentlemen, thank you. Minister Marles, you're a hard man to track down. I've had to come all the way to the Philippines to ask you a question about accountability. But I'll give it a go. When will you finally admit that the Australian Defence Force is woefully under-equipped thanks to your current budgetary spend?
Well, thank you for the question, and really happy to answer that question anywhere, including very much in Australia. And of course, I've answered questions of that kind frequently in Australia, but obviously...
But nothing's changed.
But I completely reject the assertion of the question. I mean, when we came to government, we inherited a lot of challenges associated with our Defence Force. We engaged in the biggest root and branch review of our strategic circumstances, of the state of our Defence Force, of the kind of Defence Force that we need to build.
But there's been multiple reviews, Minister, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it started with you or with your government. I think it's fair to say it's been through successive governments. But what are you doing now, today, to make it better and fix it? Because this is all very nice. This is fantastic shop window, but you don't want to be known as Minister for Showbags. There's got to be substance to it.
Well, really happy to answer the question if you allow me to answer it. And when we went through the Defence Strategic Review, we worked out what sort of Defence Force we need to build in order to meet the strategic challenge that we face. Now, what that has resulted in is two things, to answer your question. One is an unprecedented level of reprioritisation of the existing defence spend so that we are focused upon building a Defence Force which has the capacity to project. And the second thing that it's done is seen the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australian history. Now, that might fit whatever narrative you're trying to put to air, but that is in fact what has occurred. And the result of that is that we are seeing a surface combatant in terms of our fleet being brought into service 5 years quicker than what we inherited when we came to office. We are now seeing longer range missiles and missile manufacturing happening in Australia way ahead of what we inherited, such that manufacturing is commencing this year. We're seeing significant steps being taken down the path of Australia acquiring a long-range submarine capability under the banner of Aukus with our nuclear-powered submarine capability. And I could keep going.
Let's give the floor to others also to ask questions.
And there it is again. Ships, subs, and missiles, all in the future. But what about the here and now? As he claims, Minister Marles has announced some missile manufacturing in Australia, but all with global defence companies, and all with indeterminate timeframes. None with local weapons developers like Vutran's Black Sky rockets, or the cutting-edge EOS drone killers. But it's not only about high-tech war machines. It's also about boots on the ground. polling suggests only about 50% of Australians would fight to defend their country. Former Chief of Army Peter Lay believes our role in Afghanistan damaged the public's view of the ADF, with a direct impact on the numbers joining up.
Bad things happened there and no one's been held to account. And people outside look at that and say, well, why would I send my kids into an organisation like that? We need to be doing more to uphold that sense of licence, that sense of pride, that sense of tradition in the military, and that's the way you turn around some of these recruiting problems.
A legitimate criticism is that our Defence Force is hopelessly top-heavy. The ratio of frontline troops to generals, 11 times that of the US Army.
We have seen quite literally a doubling of the number of star-ranked generals in the last 20 years. It is just ridiculous.
So we've got plenty of shiny bums, but we've got no shiny new equipment.
I'm sad to say so too. And again, there has to be a sort of rapid change of mentality to get us back to the point where Defence understands what its core purpose is, which is not for breeding generals.
And yet this bloated top brass is in charge of an ADF that every year loses between 5,000 and 6,000 people.
And I think that's because people inside Defence realise that the government doesn't have their back. And people outside Defence look at it and think, well, where's the fun in that? There are many better things that I could do for a profession.
You're on record as saying that what the government are doing at the moment is dishonouring those people, servicemen and women who are in uniform today, and the legacy of those in uniform in the past.
And I say that with a real sense of passion and emotion.
That's a pretty tough thing to say.
Well, one of the hardest things I had to do, and like other chiefs of army, you're sending people into battle. And you go into battle, there's an expectation that you might be killed, that you might be wounded, or that you might come back with PTSD or some other psychological affliction. You don't do that easily. And I think we are dishonouring people if we haven't taken every step that we can to make sure that they do come back alive.
Currently, we're not, says this former general, and that's the heart of the problem with our current defence policy. Relying on big-ticket future plans without admitting and preparing for a war that could well come sooner than we think. One that will inevitably put Australian servicemen and women in harm's way, without the proper means to defend themselves or the country.
We need more people in the Australian Defence Force Reserves, but we also need more people in critical defence industries, etc., who also contribute to the defence of Australia. But having this national conversation about how important this is, I don't think we're having that conversation right now, and we absolutely should be.
Next, the gathering storm.
When China moves into an area, freedoms vanish.
Standing against the dictators.
A free Australia is in our self-interest.
Near the centre of power, in Washington, D.C., Republican Roger Wicker is chair of the US Senate Armed Services Committee, which has legislative oversight of the entire US military. He's a former serviceman, a lawyer, and a key voice in US defence matters.
Senator, your president's administration has expressed the view that we are not spending enough on our defence force. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think all of the allies are going to have to realize that we are in a very, very tough situation. I think the message needs to be to ourselves as Americans and to all of our allies, including our European allies, that the threat now is more serious than it's been in a very long time, possibly since World War II. And it's not because there are more enemies now, or more adversaries, it's that they're working together as a team.
So let's be direct with each other. Is there a view within your Armed Services Committee that we need to do more we're not pulling our weight at the moment. Is there any risk at all of AUKUS being rejected?
Well, if there is a risk, if there's anyone with that notion, I intend to take them on frontally. This was an agreement made during a previous administration, but I think we're just as committed to it. Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, speaks for us on that issue, and I hope he's been very, very clear that we're going to abide by every obligation and even expand on that if we can with regard to Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 of AUKUS.
Senator, China's expansion in the South China Sea has been nothing short of enormous over the past 10 years. How do you see our position playing out in that?
To me, it would be an utter disaster for China to have full control over the Indo-Pacific. We need to only look at Hong Kong and see how freedoms have vanished there over the last 2 decades. It's shameful. When China moves into an area, freedoms vanish. And Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin have this in common. They don't want all the territory in the world, they just want all the territory that joins them. And when they get that, they'll want the territory that joins the newly acquired land. So it is clear to anyone that the threat is to freedom-loving peoples like ours, and it comes from this axis of aggression, which includes China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia.
Senator, if you are involved in any conflict, minor or major, anywhere near our region, we're automatically included, aren't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. You're one of our steadfast allies, and a free Australia is in our self-interest. And to the extent that I have any influence in the Congress or in the government of the United States, we will be shoulder-to-shoulder partners.
That's very encouraging to hear, Senator. So between now and the time we get that first nuclear submarine in about 10 years' time, if we're attacked, you'll jump straight in there and help us, automatically.
That would absolutely be my position, yes.
Thank you so much for your time today, Senator.
You bet. God bless you all.
That's all we have time for this evening. Thanks for your company. I'm Michael Usher. Good night.